Good evening. The September 21st, 2023 meeting of the Woodbridge Township Board of Education will now come to order. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Here.
Ms. Bourdain.
Here.
Mr. Delapetro.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here.
Ms. Perez.
Here.
Mr. Sedana.
Here.
And Mr. Molnar.
Here. Mr. Secretary, as required by the Sunshine Law, please read the notice of meetings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this Act, the Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted as follows. On January 11, 2023, emailed to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the Municipal Clerk's Office, posted in Ross Street School Number 11 and the Board of Education Administration Building, also published on the school district website.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Harris, can you please read the closed session statement?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board must go into closed session in order to discuss subjects exempted from the public portion of our meeting. The discussions to be held in closed session will be regarding personnel matters, and the board will receive attorney-client advice. Any information regarding the closed session discussion will be released to the public when the reasons for discussing these matters in closed session no longer exist.
Thank you. Have a motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sedana. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The board will now retire into closed session. We will be back as soon as we are done.
So when you
Please rise for a salute to the flag and a moment of silence. Please keep in mind the victims of Farmingdale High School who were in a bus crash earlier today. As of now, one person has passed away, 5 have been critically injured. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have a motion to reconvene?
So motion?
Motion by Mrs. Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sedana. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Here.
Ms. Bourdain.
Here.
Mr. Delapetro.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here.
Ms. Perez.
Here.
Mr. Sedana.
Here.
Mr. Molnar.
Here. Mr. Secretary, please state for the record any notice of bids received.
Thank you, Mr. President. No bids were received this time.
Thank you. Dr. Mastimino, please state for the record the superintendent's reports for the month of July and August 2030.
Mr. President, I submit the reports of the attendance officers.
Thank you. The Woodbridge Township Board of Education welcomes and encourages active, productive, and respectful participation by members of the public and seeks to protect the First Amendment rights of those who engage in the exercise of free speech at this Board of Education meeting. Members of the public are requested to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect for the dignity and privacy of those whose legal rights may be impacted. The public is now invited to speak regarding the agendas being presented this evening. When you come to the microphone, please provide your name and the section of the township in which you reside, along with the specific agenda item number you wish to discuss. As per Regulation 1100D, comments must be limited to no more than 5 minutes. No response will be given until you have completed your opportunity to speak.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to speak to agenda item, policy and planning, item number 2. I attended the Keysby Block Party a few weeks ago. It was a great event in spite of the early morning thunderstorms that came on that day. To see the kids at that event really enjoying themselves and having a good time, and also enjoying the hot dogs and hamburgers, that was pretty good. I wish to thank the mayor, of course, Councilwoman Lisbeth De Jesus, the township staff, and also Pastor Leslie Samuel of the Evangel Church in Woodbridge. These folks made it possible for organizing the 8th annual Back to School backpack giveaway and school supply drive held on August 25th and August 26th. I pretty much enjoyed my pictures because I had a very purplish backpack with me. I enjoyed that. I also want to talk about the finance and insurance agenda, item number 7, and I need your understanding about this. So there is a high-impact tutoring grant. Again, this is item number 7, a high-impact tutoring grant for 3rd and 4th graders. As an educator and as someone involved in grants myself, can you provide some details or some examples about this grant?
Yeah, well, if you have any more questions, you could ask them now, and then when you're done, then we'll answer.
Okay, I do have one congratulatory comment.
Okay?
Is that okay?
Yep.
All right, not to preempt anyone, but I do want to congratulate the district on getting the Blue Ribbon Recognition Award. It's a big deal to be only one of 9 schools in the state of New Jersey. So congratulations to us, Woodbridge Township. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're very excited about that and very proud. Dr. Massimino, do you want to answer the question
Yeah,
of finance?
so the application process for these grants can turn into a little bit of a fracas sometimes, where everybody's competing for it. We've worked with Mr. Pastorino and Mr. Ali. If either one of you gentlemen want to kind of jump in here, I'm happy to turn it over to you because I know you've specifically been working with Megan from Town Hall on this.
As Dr. Massimino stated, it could be quite a fracas because it is a competitive grant by the state of New Jersey, but we're eligible for approximately $614,000 to support the learning of our students in 3rd and 4th grade. So we're in the process of crafting our grant application to make sure that we provide access for the greatest number of students, providing opportunities for students to participate, whether they are in our school buildings after school or at home. And we're looking forward to having approximately 450 students participate, pending approval of the funds.
Thank you. Anybody else on tonight's agendas? Seeing none? Superintendent's agenda? Dr. Massimino, do you have any recommendations this evening?
Mr. President, I have 17 items to present to the board.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Perez. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Any comments or questions from the board? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain.
Yes.
Mr. Delapietro.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Sedana.
Yes.
Mr. Molnar.
Yes. Policy and planning agenda. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Policy and Planning Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, presents the following 17 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Bourdain. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. President,
Ms. Anderson?
yes, I'd like to make a comment on item number 3. I would like to thank Dawn Marquez, she's the manager of the Applebee's of Woodbridge, for hosting the Stuff the Bus backpack drive and the Flapjack fundraiser. It resulted in donating over $2,000 to the students of Woodbridge Township School District, so we're very appreciative of that. I also want to give a shout out to Phil Hall from the Independent Club because he was a big advocate for that Stuff the Bus program as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain.
Yes.
Mr. Delapietro.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Sedana.
Yes.
And Mr. Molnar.
Yes. Curriculum agenda. Ms. Anderson.
Yes, thank you. Oh,
Oh, shoot, that's not the one. I'm sorry.
thank you, Mr. President. The Curriculum Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, presents the following 10 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mrs. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sedana. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
No.
Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain.
Yes.
Mr. Delapietro.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Sedana.
Yes.
Mr. Molnar.
Yes. Finance agenda, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Insurance Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and Business Administrator, present the following 8 items. I move the adoption of the foregoing.
Have a motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Perez. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. President?
Mr. Harris?
I just want to echo a comment from Mr. Mohammed regarding item number 7. Thank the administration for taking advantage of this new state grant to provide tutoring assistance to students who, obviously they lost some time and continuity in the classroom during the pandemic. This is exactly what we should be doing to help our students whether it's catch up, enrich, or whatever the case may be for those individual students. We're taking advantage of state money and providing assistance to students. So thank you very much and appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions under finance? Seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain.
Yes.
Mr. Delapietro.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Sedana.
Yes.
Mr. Molnar.
Yes. Technology, Mr. Sedana.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Technology Committee, on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, presents the following 2 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Have a motion by Mr. Sedana. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Anderson. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain.
Yes.
Mr. Delapietro.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Sedana.
Yes.
And Mr. Molnar.
Yes. Transportation agenda, Mr. Delapietro.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Transportation Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Business Administrator Board Secretary, presents the following 6 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Thank you. Have a motion by Mr. Delapietro. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sedana. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain.
Yes.
Mr. Delapietro.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yeah.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Sedana.
Yes.
Mr. Molnar.
Yes. Personnel agenda, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Personnel Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent and Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, present the following 44 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Thank you. Have a motion by Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Perez. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
No, sorry. No. Got excited.
Seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain.
Yes.
Mr. Delapietro.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
I must abstain on item number 13 in the name of Carrie Ann Harris, voting yes on the remaining agenda.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Sedana.
Yes.
Mr. Molnar.
On item number 23, I'll be abstaining on the name Charlie Molnar, yes on all other items. Mr. Bush, do you have any recommendations this evening?
I don't, Mr. Molnar.
Is there any old business that needs to be brought before the board? Is there any new business? Mr. Sedana?
Mr. President, I want to congratulate the administration, the Superintendent of Schools, our curriculum head, Mr. Ali, Ms. Baer, Dr. Giacarelli, Dr. Massimino. Blue Ribbon School is quite an honor in the state of New Jersey. Over 2 years of leadership with this administration, not only have we improved the quality of our schools, going from targeted schools to now reaching the level of a blue ribbon school, that is a phenomenal feat. So I'd like to take a moment and congratulate our leadership to put in the effort, the time, the energy, and the hard work that they do, the hours that don't get accounted for because they don't check in and check out on a time card. So it's really is something that I think you all should be proud of, and I applaud you for that effort.
Thank you, Mr. Sedana.
Mr. President,
Mrs. Anderson?
I too want to congratulate the superintendent and the administration on that achievement. I want to say congratulations to Claremont Avenue School number 20 for being named a National Blue Ribbon School. Just to give a little context about that, annually the U.S. Department of Education recognizes individual schools nationwide with this prestigious designation for high-performing schools as measured by state assessments and nationally normed tests. For the first time in over a decade, one of the Woodbridge Township School District was selected to receive this recognition. Claremont Avenue School, number 20, is only one of 9 schools in the state to receive this recognition this year among nearly 2,500 schools statewide, and the only school for Middlesex County. So on that.
Dr. Massimino?
Mr. President, thank you to all the members of the board for your kind words on behalf of the administration. I would like to thank the School 20 community. As I was a former principal from School 20. I had the privilege of giving a speech last year for the graduating class at Colonia High School, which was my first kindergarten class when I was principal at Claremont Avenue. So the community of School 20 and Claremont Avenue holds a special place in my heart. The level of support that the parents, the PTO, the volunteers, the work they do is second to none. So I thank you on behalf of the administration, Ms. Schaefer of School 20 and the teaching staff, but I would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that the community, the parents and the students do an amazing job. It is a special place in my heart, as I said before, and I'm thrilled to see them be able to celebrate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Massimino. And you're absolutely right. Our school district is unique because we do have those neighborhood schools. We've had people from the public come and say that we should have less schools and we should be more of a, one kind of like what the high schools do sometimes. They have a lot of school districts coming together in one building. This is what's unique about Woodbridge Township, is that each school is different because of the community that it resides in. It's exciting. Since I've been on the board, I think this is our third. I know School 24 became a blue ribbon school when I first got on. I believe Lindcrest, School 22 was a blue ribbon school, and now School 20. So each school is unique in its way. The community is unique. The teaching staff is unique. The administration of each school is unique. And this is a culmination of all the hard work. And it just doesn't come overnight. It comes from years. So your work as principal of School 20 helped lead to get, to this day. So congratulations. Okay, is there any other new business?
Yeah, I think Frank.
Mr. Del Pietro?
Thank you, Mr. President. Referring back to the policy and planning, item number 4, I'd like to thank the Woodbridge PBA for their generous donation of $1,000 to the PACE program. It's always nice, we have a good working relationship with the police department, and it's nice, to see the donation, and it's greatly appreciated on our behalf. I'd also like to thank Mr. Wolferman and Mr. Paglia. Our district was one of 261 school districts to win a grant from the New Jersey Department of Education for $632,877 to go towards a new roof at Island Kennedy Park School number 24. Brian, I know you work hard every day, you and your staff, and this just goes to show, your hard work. Mr. Paglia, same thing. Chucky's always out there going above and beyond. So you two guys definitely need to be recognized for this. This is huge. $600,000. You don't come across that often. And just to close out, next month is Fire Prevention Week, the week of October 9th. All your fire departments will be doing open houses. We'll be visiting the schools. So if you see fire trucks by the schools, that's that's going to be normal for. Usually it takes the whole month to get to all our schools. For the people who live in Fords, our open house at the firehouse is going to be October 9th and 10th from 5:30 to 9:30. Everyone's welcome. I know school's closed on October 9th, so if the kids are looking for something to do, come on down to the Fords Firehouse. We have plenty of stuff going on, giveaways. We're going to have hot dogs and all kinds of stuff, so everyone's welcome. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other new business?
Mr. President?
Mr. Harris?
Congrats to School 20, the entire community. Congratulations on the honor. I, don't need to repeat everything that's been said. It's all spot on. Dr. Massimino and your team, our teachers, faculty, staff, bus drivers, paras, secretaries, so on. Thank you for a great, smooth start to the school year. I've been on the board 11 years now, and we often get emails and texts, and we see those Facebook posts. I thought this year was maybe a little less than previous years, so credit to the entire 2,000 plus workforce we have in the district for making a smooth start. And then finally, I just want to give a shout out for this. I know Mr. Wolferman, Mr. Sinelli are working on this along with Ms. Fitzgerald relative to the expanded free and reduced lunch program that we have statewide. Federal government provides students who are at a certain income level the eligibility for free or reduced lunch. If you're below a certain poverty level, or excuse me, below a certain income level, you're eligible for free or reduced lunch. State of New Jersey has said, you know what, more working class families, they may be struggling through inflation or other job challenges. Some of those students may not be able to afford lunch or breakfast or so on. So the state of New Jersey, beginning this September, just a couple weeks back now, expanded eligibility for the free school meals program, lunch and breakfast. So parents out there, if you haven't considered applying for the free or reduced federal meals program, please consider. I know Mr. Wolferman and his team are out there promoting it. I saw a number of text messages and emails from our principals out to our district. Please don't think, oh, I don't qualify or I'm not eligible. Take a look at the application, see if you qualify. It doesn't hurt to apply. And I think Pomptonian provides a quality breakfast and lunch, and it's eligible. You're not required to take it. You can take it whether once a week or all 5 days a week, but it is there for you. And I know it's the kind of thing I get to work on every day down in Trenton, trying to expand that number even further, get even more students covered. But this year we took a small step, and hopefully we have more success going in the future. So thank you, Mr. Wolferman, for your assistance in that endeavor.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Anybody else? New
Mr.
business?
President, if I
Ms.
may,
Bourdain?
I want to
Absolutely.
congratulate the School 20 community as well. Ditto to everything everyone has said. It's great to see. It was a wonderful thing to see. Dr. Massimino mentioned, the volunteers, the parents, the PTO. I just want to encourage families to try to get involved. After the pandemic, it's been probably more challenging to get out and visit your kids' schools. Hopefully, you've been able to attend the open houses that have been available. Hopefully, you've seen the PTO at those schools. I know I've been seeing a lot of emails regarding the PTOs. It's so important for your kids to see you there, for other kids to see, parents be involved. It enriches the life of the school, is my firm belief. I think I speak for most people sitting up here, how important it is. Reach out to your school principal to find out how you can get involved, and they'll guide you to the president of your PTO.
Thank you. Anyone else? Before I open up to the public, I'd just like to give a special shout out to the staff at School 29, who was originally School 24, the K through 5th grade school that did win the original blue ribbon. So I guess School 29 kind of took it with them, the honors. So I want to give a shout out to the staff there for doing a great job. All right, we will now open the meeting for public comment. If you wish to say something, please come to the microphone, provide your name and the section of the township in which you reside. Again, members of the public are requested to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect for the dignity and privacy of those whose legal rights may be impacted. Please limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes in accordance with Regulation 1100D. No response will be given until you have fully completed your comments, so as to not to interrupt your 5-minute opportunity to speak. We'll now open it up to the public.
Mr. President?
Mr. Sedano?
Not to interrupt the public comment portion, I would like to recuse myself. I have a personal appointment to make, so I'll be heading out.
Yeah,
I
you're
didn't want to
excused.
disturb the public portion, so that's why I'm going to recuse myself right now.
Thank you, Mr. Sedano.
Thank you.
Okay, Paul Lund, Hope Lawn, good evening. We are now, I think, at 35% proficiency in reading for 8th graders in New Jersey. This is not just unique to New Jersey. Across the country, there's been, of course, a decline over the past several decades, actually. We're now 27th as a nation in the world. And so in that context, and with 7 years of learning loss that have been associated with what a lot of states proved were somewhat unnecessary extended lockdowns, the blue ribbon celebration, I think we should take it with a grain of salt. 35% proficiency, reading, math even worse. I think there's a lot of work to do. I don't lay that all at your feet. Like I said, this has been a trend nationwide. I just want to temper all the congratulations with that very somber thought. I'm wondering, first of all, if anyone here knows what the success sequence is. Has anyone at least heard of it by show of hands? These are 3 simple steps that help 97% of those who practice, young people who learn the success sequence, avoid poverty, falling into the pitfalls. 1, very simple, graduating high school. Number 2, getting a full-time job. Number 3, waiting till marriage before you have children. My concern as a citizen is that all this sexualizing, as some people would call it, of children, of normalizing all manner of sex, of treating sex as recreation rather than looking at it as procreation and as an expression of love with a partner in life, not just with multiple partners in a gratuitous, self-gratifying kind of way. I think when you divorce sex from love, I think the message is, it's just a physical act like eating, choosing between tofu or fries. And I think it loses something of what is important. Like I said, the success sequence, very simple, and yet very, very few children, I think, are introduced to it, and I'm surprised as adults we haven't been. Mr. Wolferman, we have a new Outlook account. I wanted you to know about that. So if you tried to send me how the money's been spent, it might have bounced back. I have a question concerning the Deputy Attorney General who's prosecuting the case for the state, admitted in court last Wednesday that the transgender policy 5756 was not mandatory. There was a poll recently, Monmouth poll, 77% of New Jersey adults, 81% of parents said yes, that the school staff should be required to notify children if they are contemplating gender change. I want to know, in light of the fact that it's not law, it's policy, the State Attorney General is on record as saying, and that Hanover Township on 9/11 did rescind repealed the transgender policy 5756, which was just the state's suggestion, repealed it. Would you consider standing with parents and standing up to the state in that regard, as opposed to having school staff having to lie or deceive parents with one set of names that they use in the school and another set of names that are used with the parents who don't know about the child's choice? And I think one last question. Have you, in all the surveys you've taken, ever asked questions about how many hours the students spend on homework? On average, how many hours are spent in front of screens, not doing homework, or in social media? Kind of reading, take a survey of the reading materials at home, things that have been known to truly contribute to the child's success at school. And I bring that up because a lot of the times it looks like we're grouping students by race so that disparate outcomes can be blamed on racism. I've heard that brought up more than one occasion, that DEI is looking, and it is appropriate to see where there's occasions of racism in the school environment, but if you're looking for it, you can always find it if you arrange data by race. Have you looked at the data based on what the successful students, those who are proficient in reading and math, have you looked at what they're doing right so that can be promoted, rather than looking for examples of racism?
Those are your questions, Mr. Lund?
Yes.
Okay. The first question about the Deputy Attorney General's statement.
I can answer a little bit about
Mr.
that,
Bush.
Mr. Lund. So the transgender policy is not mandatory.
Right.
It's not. It was designed, there's actually some history to it that may bore you all, so I'm not going to give it the whole history, but in a nutshell, a couple of years ago, Strauss-Esme, which is has a majority of the policy manuals throughout districts in New Jersey, sent out a sample policy on transgender. And the reason that they did, according to them, and frankly, it was an interesting idea, conceptually from a legal perspective only, because we were dealing with a lot of issues with students having nothing to do with anything really other than bathroom and locker room use.
Okay.
So at the time, it was really a way to administrate something that was new as a matter of school policy. It is not mandatory. Transgender is a word that appears, I think we've talked about this before, in the most widespread anti-discrimination law in the country right here in New Jersey called the Law Against Discrimination. It's a class just like military status, just like religion, just like creed. Whatever you believe about that, that is a protected...
Isn't it more employment, though, to guard against discrimination?
No, law
in
against
employment?
discrimination applies across the board with respect
Well, that's
to...
being determined if that LAD can be used in the case of suing school boards, right?
LAD's been used many times in suing the school boards beyond,
Okay.
and successfully.
Thank you for that.
used against- Unfortunately, I'm well aware of it representing school boards. I know that it's commonly used well beyond the context of,
Okay.
of employment. But again, just so you know, we don't disagree that it's mandatory or not mandatory, but it helps the districts beyond the issues you're describing, and we're not getting into that right now in this discussion. I'm simply explaining to you that it was used as a policy mechanism when there was some concern that we might be, if we weren't doing this right, discriminating against transgender students and staff. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Okay. Dr. Massimino.
Yeah, the second question was, do we have somehow being able to figure out how much homework the children are dedicated to each night?
In the surveys you've done, and I know
Yeah,
there's been surveys given, has
I
that
heard the
kind of
question.
data been
I heard the
included?
question. I got you. No, we have not. But I want to qualify the basis of your question. When you talk about DEI, you talk about race. When I talk about DEI, I talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that includes, right, a student's socioeconomic status.
Dr. Massimino, if I could just interrupt you. Ms. Lonigan, did Mr. Lund's 5 minutes up? Okay, Mr. Lund, I don't want some back and forth now. Doctor, if you had 5 minutes still left, I would allow it, but I'm going to let Dr. Massimino just answer your question.
When we talk about that, we talk about a lot of things, right? So we may look at race or gender and different breakdowns and subgroups and try to parcel out, but we also look at a lot of things that you don't mention that I think are important. We look at a student's socioeconomic status, right? What kind of resources do they have available to them? We look at their security of the language. Are they a limited English proficient student where, okay, so now we need to make sure are there supports at home for them? And I say that with the idea of I don't like the idea that when we talk about DEI, it is automatically categorized as race. I think that's a very inaccurate, incomplete picture when we do surveys and we are looking at a myriad of things. And I'm very familiar with data, right? I worked with a lot of data doing my research and dissertation, and you can make numbers say what you want if that's your purpose, right? Our purpose here isn't to push an agenda beyond the idea of helping students improve and grow, right? That's the agenda I'm pushing. It's not with a particular subgroup or a particular race or a particular category of student. They're all our students. So I want to see them all grow. I want to see them all learn. We're pretty in tune, I would say, in speaking with the staff of what kind of homework is given. I don't know that we would have to ask the question, how much time does a high school student spend on a screen or social media? I mean, my phone tells me at the end of the week how much my average day was. Those are things we could potentially look into, but I don't think those are the big barriers, I'll be candid with you. I didn't grow up with cell phones. You didn't grow up with cell phones, so that there wasn't the opportunity to get lost on a screen. Streaming devices didn't exist. If you wanted to see a movie, you actually had to drive to a movie theater. I do remember seeing a movie outdoor. I thought it was awesome. Love to see that come back, but that's a different discussion. So we look at a lot of things. We're trying to figure out where are the barriers, right? How do we increase and I'm talking about barriers, like I said before. Is it a monetary thing? Is it a language thing? Is it a technology thing? What is it? So I just want to be very clear to answer your question, have we given that survey? No. But I do want to qualify when you talk about DEI, I think it's unfair to categorize DEI, right, diversity, equity, inclusion, something that, we've talked about, I've talked about it, at length a number of times. To categorize just as a racial component, I think is short-sighted, because it does include so much more, and it does include so many more of our students that we would never leave out of the discussion. So leaving that, when we talk about DEI, leaving them out, I do think paints an incomplete picture. And I'm going to disagree with you that the blue ribbon is something to be taken with a grain of salt. 9 schools were honored. I think anytime you receive an honor, you celebrate it. So I'm not going to temper my celebration. I think they should celebrate it, and I think they were in the right to. So, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Lund.
Thank you.
Good evening, Tom Maris, Sports, New Jersey. It's nice to be back with you again.
How you feeling, Mr. Maris? Okay?
Sir?
Feeling good?
We're getting there. It's an interesting journey, and you just got to be very cautious about certain things. It's certainly mind-opening, if you will. But thank you. I appreciate your inquiry for that. Yeah, I just heard what Mr. Lund had to say, and I heard it with Dr. Massimino, and I would say that I would agree with Dr. Massimino and Mr. Lund about, the 35% score is not great, but if it is an improvement and we're getting kudos on it, that means we're doing something right and we are getting past the curve. And that in itself is noteworthy and should be honored as such. So I would certainly say congratulations to Dr. Massimino, the board, and obviously all of the teachers that worked that hard to pull up those scores and get that blue ribbon. And I think that permeates throughout our entire school. And kind of going off on something that I hadn't planned on, because I had some other things I want to talk about. And that is, I want to thank Nicole and Mr. Wolferman for getting me some information in a very timely manner. I came to them a little late for the request, and they were able to get it back to me within a day, and I very much appreciate that. It dealt with a lot of the policies that the board or the school district operates under. One of them is File Code 5020, and its policy, role of parental guardians. And I noted that this was first adopted in on December 21st, 1978, readopted March 17th, 1983, approved by, or reviewed and updated by the NJSBA December 2011, and readopted on August 21st, 2014. I might add that you should take a look at that, because I'm not sure that it really holds true with today's viewpoints about what this speaks to, and that is the role of parents and guardians. To quote, the Woodbridge Township Board of Education believes that the education of children is a joint responsibility, one it shares with the parents, guardians, and school community. To ensure that the best interests of the children are served in a process and a strong program of communication between home and school must be maintained, and parental involvement in the district concerns encouraged. Now, if I keep reading all of this, I'm going to run out of my time, but it's very important to say that down further on it goes talking about parents, guardians must by law be included in development of certain educational programs for their children. My question at the end of this, or I'll interject it now, is which certain programs does that speak to? And again, going back and looking at the involvement, we just have been talking at this meeting and prior meetings about how parents were being cut out, that parental rights were a major concern, that the state, not you necessarily, that you're following the state's mandates, was effectively cutting the parents out on certain issues, and that was notification. If one of their children decided that they wanted to transition or that they wanted to be called by something other than their original legal name that appeared on their birth certificate, and particularly if it did involve a sexual connotation. And I do agree with you, Dr. Massimino. I don't believe all DEI is only about race. It's not. It's a component of it, obviously, and that's what helped bring it about. But it goes much broader than that, and there are many parts of it that I do concur with. The ones that I don't, I'm obviously speaking to and will continue to speak to them. Something came up, and again, this is just something I was able to find today after about hearing it yesterday. It goes back to Dr. Martin Luther King discussed homosexuality while answering a young man's plea for advice in 1958. In turbulent times, it was always tempting to look for words of wisdom from history's great leaders. On Martin Luther King Day, many will wonder what the legendary activist would think of America if he were alive today. Again, I'm going to skip over some of this, and I'll get right into what Dr. King was talking about, and that was he was giving advice to a young man that wrote in, and I said, I am a boy. This is the child writing to Dr. King. But I feel about boys the way I ought to feel about girls. I don't want my parents to know about me. What can I do? Is there a place where I can go to get help? Dr. King replied, your problem is not at all uncommon one. Is not at all an uncommon one. However, it does require careful attention. The type of feeling that you have toward boys is probably not an innate tendency, but something that has been culturally acquired. Your reason for adopting this habit have now been consequently suppressed or unconsciously repressed. Therefore, it is necessary to deal with the problem by getting back to some of the experiences and criticisms that led, circumstances that led to the habit. And he did call it a habit. In order to do this, I would suggest that you see a good psychiatrist who can assist you in bringing the forefront of the consciousness of all these experiences, circumstances that led you to the habit.
Thank you. Mr. Maris, your time is up.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So my question is, how would you respond to Dr. King today, given what he felt was that case, and how do you then treat the children? Are you doing it through psychological counseling, or how do you then handle somebody that's in perhaps trying to do a transition and unsure?
Okay. So we have two questions.
Yeah.
Dr. Massimino, I don't know if you want to handle the first one. Which programs does it pertain to in our policy?
There's no specific programs. Obviously, when that policy was adopted, it was a different way of doing school. I would say nowadays, the way we do our family programs, it's not a joint decision on curriculum or the textbook we choose. That's, the curriculum is something the state gives you the standards, and then the district picks the materials and resources that they would use to teach those standards. So I couldn't give you a specific answer. I don't know that there is a specific answer to give in terms of what that looks like. The partnership with parents from schools today is our family programs, the things we send home that we ask parents to participate in. It's a different world than it was in I don't know what year you said that policy was adopted. So
78.
78. So I would say that the spirit of the policy as it was adopted in 1978 and how we would apply it now is likely different. So I couldn't speak to 1978. I wasn't in school in 1978, so I couldn't give you that perspective. But I would say now it's a little bit different in terms of, if a student can access something via a Chromebook at home, the parent now has an opportunity to see what that student is doing before you came home with the papers your teacher graded. There was no parent portal in 1978, so parents have the opportunity to check grades in live time as they're posted. So I would say the spirit of the policy and how it's written in 1978 and how we would apply now is likely different. I would say the technology that we have and the way we can leverage it in terms of giving parents insight into what their students are learning and how they're performing, more importantly, on a day-to-day basis is the crux of what we want in terms of their engagement.
Okay, and then I think the second question with the advice Dr. King was giving, how do we counsel?
Yeah, I would say that it's a pretty broad question. There's not advice given to the student on what steps to, I'm not sure I understand your question when you're talking about are they asking the counselor how to transition? That's not the type of question a counselor is qualified to answer. The counselor's there to make sure that the student's social and emotional learning is okay, and if there's a dialogue that needs to take place with the parent to assist that child with the ability to have that conversation safely and appropriately.
Well, that's the problem, because if you don't tell the parent, how do they get the child help, or how do you get them to see a psychiatrist or right, that's where the problem lies.
Just like Mr. Lund.
Okay.
I don't want to have a debate going back and forth.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies.
Good evening, John Rotari, Woodbridge over here. I want to ask a couple of questions, and I just went to this resolution, but I can't let it on. What really brought memory back, but I'm going to explain to you. But anyway, I would like to know, I'm asking a question tonight, about number 14 school, there's a talk about in Fords that they're going to build another school with $24 million. I said that's probably impossible. And my real question would be, the kids that we went to number 14 school, they have to be bused to other schools now. My question would be, how many more kids are bused because of that school was closed? That's number one. Number two, school over here, 107 Rose Street, across the parking lot, number 107, the house was demolished. I believe the mayor said it was paid $350,000 to buy the house. Additional probably $40,000 to demolish it, and another $13,000, $15,000 to EPA cleanup. Who pays for that? The school pay for it, or mayor's township is going to pay for it? That's one of them. Again, most important, how many more students in the school 23 and 24 attend the school now? I don't know if you know exact number yet, but probably by the end of this month you would know. And I don't want to hear a number say about north of this and north of that. We would like to know what's exactly the numbers, how many more students we do. We understand in the last 10 years, we do have more than 8,000 more population in this township. And I know there's a lot of kids among them. And I know it's not your fault. I know you have to take care of them, and I'm proud of all of you. But again, don't put the wagon before the horse. You got to be ready in advance what's coming down the pike, and you know that kids are coming, and there's a lot of things that's coming to the town that we have to be ready for it. And you can't wait those people down every 4 years. They change the administration and they tell you what has to be done. You got to be ready way in advance at the time. And the most important thing that a couple of weeks ago, I brought a book over here. I gave it to the beautiful lady over here, Secretary Hughes, to give you to read it. Guns Hurt. And again, years ago back, I remember, there was Officer Pat Devlin. Some of you probably know. They went to school in Woodbridge. They had a course. They used to go to schools that they teach kids about safety, guns, driving. Again, it's very important. Some of the kids come from foreign countries, never heard of it, but we know how important it is that because kids accessible, all those things accessible to the cars. They can learn how to drive the car when they're 10 years old. They drive the tractor. I was 16 years old, I used to fly the plane. But again, you gotta be ready for it. So don't ignore it. Any little thing could help. If it helps one child, it will be worth something to look into it. But let me go to another thing would be, I went to the resolution over here, and kind of caught me, where is the National School Launch Program was initiated in 1946. What is the National School Launch Week will observe school district through the nation end. Well, I tell you, 1952, I started school in Europe, in communist country. And everything was Truman. Truman eggs, Truman's butter, Truman's bread, Truman's marmalade. They didn't tell us who Truman was. They never told us in school who's the Truman that give all the stuff to us. It was the President Truman. We were a communist nation. And they taught us in school how that capitalism no good. We fed not just Yugoslavia, we fed all those countries in the world. Where probably people in this country didn't have it. Those were hard times. But we are very generous. And it's no kind of a children who was innocent. How we knew about it, who the Truman was. It wasn't to our schools, it's to our parents and grandparents. The Americans are good. Some of us didn't buy it. People like myself, we bought it. The communism is no good, the capitalism is what it depends on it. But that's very important. And they taught us not just the good things, the right things, how to be young men, how to be young women. And today, Well, we are doing something, a lot of people in the world do it. I don't say I just came from Europe. They don't teach the stuff there, what you teach over here. How much time does it take from education, even tonight, just to teach kids something it's not your job. Your teachers are not trained to teach this diversity, all this other stuff.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Vitale.
one thing in Europe, the quote was, every bird flies to its own flock.
Thank you. I have to ask you a question.
Right.
I've known you a long time. Did you say you flew a plane at 16?
Pardon me?
I thought you said at 16 you flew a plane or drove a plane?
Yeah, flew a plane, yeah.
Airplane?
Airplane.
Yeah. You?
Yeah. And then, then I got my solo license over here.
I never knew that about you.
Well, you know why? I don't want to take your time, but don't come with
No,
me.
we'll give you 1 minute.
I was in Europe. And what happened was,
This is interesting.
the crop duster, the aeroplane flew, and the glider landed on the farms. So all the kids ran over there to help the pilot land the double wingers, and they would take the glider away. So what happened was, I said, if I learn how to fly the plane, I could fly it to Hungary and I could land it on the field too. And that's how we got interested to do it, right? But again, in '58, I tried to escape when I was, So the thing was, that was my dream to become a pilot. And then I got my solo license in Linden, and my ex-wife, at that time we were going through hard times, and she was afraid I'm going to get killed. So I said, okay, I will fly tonight, today, but I won't fly now again.
Can't get hurt in the barber shop.
And I said, well, she wants a divorce, but I said, if I get killed, you got everything, so only half of it. But anyway, so what happened was
we're glad you came here.
So what happened was my instructor, which became a friend of mine, he got a high blood pressure, and he was grounded because I had third class physical, and you pilot, you got to have a first class physical. Long story short, I said, wait a minute, there's no future being a pilot here because you get sick. Sure enough, myself, I got high blood pressure now, so I would retire anyway, but that was the best thing about flying the plane.
Thank you, Mr. Vitale. Thank you.
Now, can I have some answers?
What's that?
Can I have any answer on the school? How many kids in the school? And
That's right. You did ask some questions.
Yeah.
All right. You got it?
Yeah, okay, so I couldn't answer you off the top of my head how many students from school 14 are now bused to 25. I would say probably the vast majority. I couldn't speak to an exact number.
Yeah.
But I would likely think most of them.
But I'm talking the whole district.
No, Mr. Vitale, I have to let Dr. Time's up, so just let Dr. Massimino
The question that I
answer
thought
the
you
question.
asked, and if I'm incorrect on this, then I'm incorrect on this, was I thought you asked how many students from school 14 are now bused to school 25.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, so that was the question, correct?
That would basically be the majority of the school.
Correct. That's what I said, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You did.
The second question was who's doing the cleanup over here. That's a municipal project.
Thank you.
And I know you want an exact number, Mr. Vitale, so I'm going to do my best to be concise with this. Our enrollment in the Woodbridge Township School District, much like many school districts, changes on a daily basis. Obviously, the daily change is very small, right? Maybe some students come in, maybe some students move out. I couldn't tell you. So the amount of students that we have in a given year is dependent on a lot of things. The size of the graduating class, the incoming kindergarten class, when you decide to take the enrollment report, all of those things go into it. So I'm not sure when you're asking, how many more students that we have now as opposed to last year, I couldn't give you asked for an exact number. That exact number is likely going to change on the day you ask that question by a couple students.
Can I just one thing? You said last year we had north of 14,000.
Right, at the time you asked me.
Right.
Do you remember when you asked me?
Would you say it's north of 15,000 now or what?
I don't remember when you asked me because you've asked me that question several times. So I'm not sure when you asked me, which is why I said before, as I just stated, the timing matters. Did you ask me when we were doing registration where I was counting the incoming kindergartners while we still had kindergartners and the senior class had not yet graduated? That's going to increase that number. If we do it after the senior class has graduated and all of the kindergartners were enrolled and we start the school year, that number obviously would be lower.
Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of stop this now. Just basically, you'll have a base number. It'll fluctuate a little bit, but you'll be around a certain number. And we could get you that number if you wanted tomorrow. We could get you what it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patara. Is there anybody else? Seeing none, I'd like to thank everybody for their comments and their questions. The chair will enter a motion to adjourn.
So motion?
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Della Pietro. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries.